Ladies and gentlemen, being nice sounds good on the surface. It's what we're taught growing up. Be polite. Be agreeable. Don't rock the boat. Don't hurt anyone's feelings. Be someone everyone can get along with. But the truth is, this idea of being nice is often a cleverly disguised prison. It convinces you that sacrificing your own desires, your own time, your own truth, and your own goals in the name of harmony is noble. But there is nothing noble about abandoning yourself. When you are constantly saying yes to everything just to maintain peace, you're saying no to your own progress, and you don't even realize it. You end up building your entire identity around making other people comfortable while quietly burying the version of yourself that was meant to rise. There is a fundamental lie at the core of being nice. That lie is, if I'm nice enough, people will respect me, support me, love me, and give me what I need. But real life doesn't work like that. What happens is the complete opposite. The more you bend over backward to be agreeable, the more people walk all over you. You teach them how to treat you. You teach them that your time is cheap, your energy is unlimited, and your opinions don't really matter. And when you're nice long enough, you forget how to say no. You forget how to demand more. You forget how to draw a line in the sand. You forget how to speak with power. You don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you demand. But the nice person never demands anything. They don't rock the boat. They don't set standards. They don't challenge disrespect. So they end up living a low, grade, compromised version of their life. Deep down, they know it. They feel it in their chest every time they agree to something that doesn't align with them. They feel it every time they shrink back instead of stepping forward. They feel it when they give more than they receive. That's the soul's way of telling you you're off course. You can't live a performance life in people-pleasing mode. You weren't born to be nice. You were born to be real. People confuse nice with kind. They are not the same. Kindness is strength. It's a conscious choice to treat others with decency, rooted in self-respect. Being nice is rooted in fear, fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. Kindness comes from fullness, niceness comes from lack, and that's why nice people often end up feeling used, tired, and unseen. Because they're giving from a place of obligation, not overflow, and when you do that long enough, you start to resent everyone around you. Not because they're bad people, but because you train them to expect you to betray yourself for their benefit. This fake persona you've created, the agreeable one, the one who never offends, never says no, never speaks too loudly, never disagrees, has nothing to do with who you really are. That version of you is a mask, and every minute you wear it, you are delaying the life you could be living. You're not here to be tolerated, you're here to make a mark. And that means being bold enough to be disliked by some, because the truth is, the world will never fully accept you until you fully accept yourself. And that acceptance requires saying, I'm done being nice if it costs me my dreams. Look at any successful person you admire. They're not nice, they're real, they're direct, they're focused, they don't compromise on their standards to make others feel better. They know who they are, and that's what draws people to them, because authenticity is magnetic, while people-pleasing is repellent. You can either be respected or liked. Trying to be both is what keeps most people broke, emotionally exhausted, and stagnant for years. If you want to change your life, you have to stop trying to be the version of you that everyone else approves of, and start becoming the version of you that you respect when no one's watching. When you break free from being nice, you start telling the truth, you stop overcommitting, you stop apologizing for taking up space, you stop accepting less than what you deserve, you stop giving energy to people who only take, you stop making excuses for others. You stop dumbing yourself down to keep others comfortable. You stop staying quiet when your soul is screaming. That shift, when you stop seeking approval and start seeking alignment, is when the transformation begins. That's when people begin to notice you, not because you're loud or arrogant, but because you've finally stepped into your real power. You'll feel it the first time you say no without explaining, the first time you walk away from a conversation that drains you, the first time you raise your standards and refuse to lower them to fit in, the first time you stop laughing at jokes that offend your spirit, the first time you trust your gut even when everyone around you disagrees, the first time you choose rest over hustle because you're not trying to prove anything anymore. That's when you'll realize you never needed to be nice to be powerful. You just needed to be honest. The problem is, most people fear rejection more than they crave transformation. But the ones who change their lives are the ones who stop fearing rejection and start fearing regret. Because every time you betray yourself to fit in, you accumulate regret. And regret is far more painful than being misunderstood or disliked for a while. The truth is, not everyone is supposed to like you, not everyone will get you. But the ones who do, the ones who respect your boundaries, admire your authenticity, and align with your vision, those are your real tribe. And you don't find them until you stop being nice and start being real. The disease of approval seeking is one of the most dangerous mental viruses in existence because it hides behind a mask that looks like humility, empathy, and connection. But what it really is deep at its core is fear, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of rejection, criticism, isolation, or judgment, and it controls people in the most subtle, quiet, and devastating ways. It convinces you to shrink every time you feel the urge to expand. It teaches you to check people's faces before you speak your truth. It makes you second. Guess your instincts, your dreams, your voice, because deep down, you're waiting for someone else to approve of you before you decide to approve of yourself. The truth is, when you become addicted to approval, you stop living your own life. You start borrowing the lives of others. You start shaping your behavior, your choices, your goals, even your personality, around what you think will win you love, attention, validation, or praise. And it might work temporarily. You might get the applause, you might get the likes, you might get the pat on the back. But it will always be empty because it wasn't earned through authenticity. It was won through performance. And that kind of validation is fleeting. The second you stop acting the way they want, it disappears. Which means you have to keep performing over and over until eventually you forget who you were before the mask. Approval seeking becomes a silent prison. No one locks the door, but you live inside it like you don't have the key. You're free to say no, but you don't. You're free to walk away, but you stay. You're free to disappoint people, but you'd rather disappoint yourself. You've convinced yourself that being liked is more important than being fulfilled, that not rocking the boat is more valuable than following your truth. And slowly, quietly, that choice kills your fire. It kills your creativity. It kills your confidence. Because every time you override your instincts just to avoid conflict or discomfort, you weaken your own sense of self. And without a strong sense of self, you cannot lead, create, or rise. The worst part is, most people don't even realize they're caught in it. It's so deeply conditioned. From childhood, we're taught to obey, to fit in, to play nice, to be good, to not question authority, to please our teachers, our parents, our peers. We learn early that stepping out of line means punishment or rejection, so we adapt. We begin shaping ourselves into what others want, and over time we confuse that shape with our identity. We forget that we chose it out of fear, not truth, and now, as adults, that fear still runs the show. It's no longer about pleasing our parents, it's about the boss, the friends, the audience, the world. Same disease, different faces. There is nothing more exhausting than living a life where your worth is outsourced to other people's opinions. Every move you make, you calculate. Every word you speak, you filter. Every choice you consider, you hesitate. Not because you don't know what you want, but because you're afraid they won't like what you want, so you play small. You choose safe, you go silent, and the longer you do it, the more you start to believe the lie that says, "This is who I am." But it's not. It's just who you became to survive. Now it's time to unlearn all of it, because you can't create greatness from a place of fear. You can't step into your purpose while you're still begging for approval from people who don't even know your soul. You can't unlock your potential if your first instinct is to wonder what other people will think. Every time you ask for permission, you lower your power. Every time you dilute your message to make it more palatable, you lose the very edge that makes it impactful. And every time you seek to be liked, you give away the energy that was meant to be invested in becoming exceptional. The irony is, the people who are truly respected in this world are never the ones who seek approval. They're the ones who speak boldly, live authentically, and stay grounded in their truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unpopular. People don't admire those who bend to every opinion. They admire those who stand firm in who they are, regardless of the noise. That's power, that's presence, and that only comes when you stop outsourcing your self-worth and start building it from within. Approval seeking is the silent killer of destiny. It doesn't just delay your progress, it detours you entirely. You start walking a path that was never yours, surrounded by people who don't really know you, chasing goals that don't light you up, living a life that slowly numbs you to the point where you don't even remember what passion feels like, and when you finally wake up to the truth, you realize the prison was never outside of you. It was always internal, the door was never locked, you were just scared to open it. And when you finally stop needing validation, something powerful happens. Your energy returns, your vision sharpens, your voice deepens, you become more decisive. You start making moves based on alignment, not approval. You say no without guilt. You walk away from anything that insults your soul. You stop performing and start becoming. And the people who matter will still be there. In fact, you'll attract even more aligned souls, people who don't need you to shrink, dilute, or pretend. People who love you in your raw, unfiltered, unapologetic truth. But none of that happens until you kill the disease of approval, seeking and choose self-respect over popularity every single time. Saying no is one of the most powerful and liberating actions a human being can take, but it's also one of the most feared. Most people go their entire lives avoiding it. They're afraid to say no to a job that drains them, afraid to say no to a relationship that's already expired, afraid to say no to friends who disrespect their time, afraid to say no to obligations, traditions, and social norms that no longer align with who they are. But the truth is, every single no you avoid is a door you leave open to chaos, confusion, and weakness. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you sign a silent contract with mediocrity, and you pay for it with your peace, your focus, and your energy. The power of no is not in rejection, it's in redirection. Every no clears the path for what matters most. It's a filter that removes distractions, weak connections, and draining commitments from your life. Most people think discipline is about grinding and hustling, about waking up early and working late. But that's only part of it. Real discipline, the kind that shapes empires and legends, is about knowing what to say no to. Discipline is about protecting your time like it's your life, because it is. When you say no to the things that don't align with your vision, you're saying yes to your evolution. And nothing grows faster than a life that's no longer weighed down by useless obligations. But let's be clear, saying no is not easy at first. It triggers guilt, it shakes up your identity, especially if you've built it around being the dependable one, the agreeable one, the person who never causes waves. That image is comforting, but it's also a prison. When you always say yes just to be liked, you start to resent the very people you're trying to please. You become bitter, burned out, and quietly angry not at them, but at yourself, because deep down you know better. You know your time is valuable, you know your energy is sacred, and yet you keep giving it away like it means nothing. That disconnect between what you know and how you act creates internal chaos. The only way to stop that cycle is to reclaim your no. People fear saying no because they believe it leads to loss of relationships, opportunities, or acceptance. But that's a lie sold to you by a society that profits from your obedience. The truth is, saying no doesn't lead to loss. It leads to alignment. Yes, some people will leave. Yes, some bridges will burn. But what remains will be real, and what arrives after will be pure. You're not here to live a life that pleases everyone. You're here to build a life that fulfills your purpose. And the only way to do that is to honor your inner compass more than you fear outside noise. Every strong boundary you set is an act of self-respect. Every no you say without apology is a declaration that you will no longer negotiate with what drains you. And you don't have to scream it, you don't have to be aggressive about it. Your no can be calm, it can be firm. It can be delivered with grace, but it must be real. It must come from a place of truth, not resentment. It must come from clarity, not ego. Because this is not about pushing people away. It's about pulling yourself back into alignment. Every no becomes a brick in the foundation of your character. Over time, that foundation becomes unshakable. You become the kind of person who doesn't flinch under pressure, who doesn't bend just to avoid confrontation. You become solid. Learning to say no teaches you who you are. It sharpens your values, it clarifies your goals, it forces you to identify what actually matters, and once you build that awareness, you start to see how many areas of your life were filled with noise. Pointless conversations, fake friendships, shallow commitments, draining routines, all of it fades when you start using no. Like a scalpel, cutting away the distractions that have been slowing you down, and what you're left with is focus. Pure, clean, uninterrupted focus. That's when momentum builds. That's when breakthroughs happen. That's when your life finally begins to reflect your vision instead of your fears. You'll notice the shift. You'll feel lighter, clearer, more powerful, not because the world changed, but because you did. Because you finally took responsibility for your energy. You stopped apologizing for your standards. You stopped accepting crumbs from people who didn't value your presence. You stopped making room for what no longer deserved a seat at your table. And in doing so, you created space for growth, for clarity, for real connection, and for explosive results. People will ask what changed. They'll wonder why you look more focused, more alive, more in control. The answer won't be visible on the surface, it'll be in every silent no. You said behind closed doors, every moment you chose alignment over approval, every time you trusted yourself enough to walk away. There is deep, radical power in refusing to betray yourself ever again. Every time you say no from a place of self-awareness, you become more magnetic, more respected, more grounded in who you are. And once you tap into that power, you stop chasing what isn't yours, you stop settling for less, you stop explaining yourself to people who never deserved access to your truth in the first place. You operate from purpose, not pressure. You lead with intention, not insecurity. You rise, not because you shouted louder, but because you finally stopped lowering your standards to meet a world that never had your best interest in mind. Negative feelings are often treated like enemies, things to avoid, suppress, ignore, or run away from. Society has conditioned us to believe that feeling bad means something is wrong with us. We've been trained to think that sadness, anger, guilt, fear, or anxiety are signs of weakness or failure. But this is a complete misunderstanding of how human emotion works. Negative feelings are not problems, they are feedback. They are the internal alarm system designed to communicate something valuable. And when you learn to read that feedback instead of resisting it, you start unlocking a deeper level of personal mastery. Too many people live their entire lives avoiding their feelings. They distract themselves with noise, numb themselves with comfort, or bury their emotions under fake positivity. But what you suppress never disappears, it grows stronger. What you run from ends up chasing you. You can't escape emotion, you can only transform it. And transformation doesn't happen through denial, it happens through awareness. You have to become a student of your emotional state. When fear shows up, instead of judging it, you ask, what is this fear trying to protect me from? When anger rises, you ask, what boundary is being crossed? When guilt comes in, you explore, is this true guilt, or is it programmed shame that I've been taught to carry? This level of introspection is rare because most people don't want to sit with discomfort. They want quick fixes. They want distractions, but real growth is uncomfortable. Real change requires facing the parts of yourself that are wounded, insecure, or confused. It requires understanding that negative feelings are not the enemy. They are messengers. They show you where you still need healing. They reveal your unprocessed pain, your unresolved past, your hidden triggers. And instead of being ashamed of them, you need to learn how to use them. Think of your feelings like a compass. Positive emotions pull you toward alignment, and negative emotions warn you when you're off course. But most people only follow one half of the compass. They chase the highs and ignore the lows. That's like trying to navigate with only half a map. You'll never reach your destination. The low points matter, the pain matters, the discomfort matters. Because those emotional signals are guiding you back to your power. They are the raw data of your transformation. But they only work if you listen without judgment. One of the most powerful things you can do is stop labeling emotions as good or bad. There's no such thing. Emotions just are. They are energy in motion. They are temporary states. They are not facts. They are not permanent. But when you assign judgment to them, you give them unnecessary weight. For example, feeling fear doesn't mean you're a coward. Feeling sadness doesn't mean you're broken. Feeling anger doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're human. It means something in your internal or external environment needs attention, and giving that attention is not weakness, it's wisdom. Most people try to think their way out of negative feelings. They use logic to suppress emotion. They say things like, I shouldn't feel this way. I need to be stronger. I'll just get over it. But the emotional body doesn't respond to intellectual suppression. What it needs is acknowledgement. What it needs is permission to exist without being attacked. When you allow yourself to feel fully without trying to fix it instantly, something powerful happens. You release the resistance. And once resistance is gone, clarity follows. You begin to see the root cause of your emotion, and from that awareness, you can actually change it. Change doesn't come from fighting your feelings. It comes from integrating them. If you feel insecure, instead of beating yourself up for it, ask where that insecurity was born. Who told you that you weren't enough? Whose voice are you still carrying in your head? If you feel anxious, ask what future outcome you're obsessing over and why you don't feel safe in the unknown. If you feel guilt, ask whether the guilt is yours or a result of external conditioning. This kind of inquiry is how you dismantle emotional programming. It's how you remove the emotional anchors that are keeping you stuck in the same cycle. Most people think destiny is shaped by actions, and it is, to a degree. But actions are driven by emotions. Your emotional state determines the level of energy, clarity, and decision, making you bring to your actions. So, if your emotions are distorted or unexamined, your actions will be reactive, not strategic. You'll find yourself repeating the same patterns, sabotaging your own progress, and calling it bad luck. But it's not bad luck. It's bad programming, and that programming lives in your emotional body. If you want to shape a different destiny, you have to regulate the emotional lens through which you view the world. This is why emotional mastery is non-negotiable. You can have the best strategy, the clearest vision, the most powerful intention, but if you don't know how to manage your internal state, you'll fall apart every time discomfort shows up. The ability to pause, reflect, and process your feelings gives you power over your reactions. You stop being a slave to impulse. You stop spiraling into self-doubt every time something doesn't go your way. You stop over-identifying with every emotion that passes through you. You begin to observe your emotions instead of becoming them, and from that place of observation you gain control. Not through force, not through denial, but through understanding, and once you understand your emotional patterns, you start rewiring your emotional defaults. You stop defaulting to fear and start choosing courage. You stop defaulting to shame and start choosing compassion. You stop defaulting to doubt and start choosing action. You create a new emotional baseline, one that supports your evolution instead of blocking it. That shift, that deep internal recalibration, is where real transformation begins. And it begins with facing the feelings you've been avoiding and reading them like sacred instructions from the deepest part of yourself.